again, we're on the main login screen. As I explained, if the system does not recognize your login address, it will tell you so, and at which time you could create a new user login, and it will send, whether you create a new user login or if you have to reset your password, you will be sent an email with a link in it. Those links are timely. If you do not answer that link within a certain amount of time, you will need to ask for another email. So if you ever see something in the email that says the token has expired, it just means that you did not click on the link in the resulting email in a timely fashion. Just visit the website again and go through the login process, and it will send you a new email. If you do have your login created successfully, click the login button, and you will see the My Registrants page. This is the main page that you're going to see for the login. One of the features of the new application is that we've gone away from the logins that were assigned by BEGA. I think they were LOB with some numbers involved. So those are all gone. They don't work in the system at all anymore. We're asking people to create logins using either their work email or some personal email of some sort. You would be able to log into the system. And once you're on this My Registrant page, this My Registrant page is your jumping off point. You can have a variety of different registrants, which is the main focus of the paperwork that you will be submitting to BEGA. In this case, this page will allow you as a lobbying group to take care of your own profile and file reports for your the reports for your clients. It also allows you to file the paperwork for the clients themselves. So you would do that here. You would create a registrant for your own organization as a lobbying group. And on this page, you would also create a new registrant for the clients as well if you're doing their paperwork for them. If you're not, if you're just an association that lobbies for themselves, you would just do the one registrant. And if you are a lobbying group that files reports for your clients, but the clients haven't asked you to do their own paperwork, then you would see only the one registrant on this page.
I have a question. Is this a good time to ask?
Sure, go ahead, Erin.
Okay, so I work for a nonprofit, a lobbying entity. We only lobby for ourselves. Our executive director registered himself and listed the organization as a client, and he was able to enter his lobbying communications. And tried to ask.
And I think let me try to get into the software, and I think there'll be a better chance to ask that question as we get along. Hopefully, I'll answer that question as we start talking about the software a little bit. But please, in about 10 minutes, ask that same question, and we'll be a little bit further along, and it'll have a little bit more structure to it. In any case, on this page, there is the ability for the create new registrant here. Again, if you are a lobbying entity, a lobbying group, if you're a company that holds themselves out to lobby for other organizations, you would be a lobbyist. If you are a entity that has internal lobbyists, you are still a lobbying entity. If you are doing paperwork for the client, this is the sort of the mirror image report where clients have to file, just like the lobbyists have to file. This is where you would add yourself as a new client. Really, the only two differences between these two is the titles, and you'll see along the way, I'll mention where they are. For the most part, these are two really effectively same process. We just switch the titles around to make it a little bit clearer what's going on. But in any case, I've entered a registrant here under the lobbying group, the XYZ lobbying group under the registrants. I'm going to click on this to really start the reporting process. This registrant profile page.
I'm sorry to interrupt you. Can I ask you a quick question before you move on? You said something about if you're reporting for your client, you would pick the add new client. We have lobbyists. We have a lobbyists that work for clients outside of our entity. Would we be adding them as new clients here?
Okay, and again, these individual questions we can help with. There's lots of different situations. The software is trying to be flexible enough to allow a lot of different situations to be able to report within the framework of the software. Very specific questions such as that, if we can hold those to the end so that we can either deal with them at the end of the presentation or separately on a phone call, that would be best. But yes, there are definitely situations where the software is very much tailored towards a lobbying group filing paperwork for the clients they represent. But we do understand that there are other situations where there are associations that hire internal lobbyists and also hire an external lobbying group. And those specific situations we can deal with offline. There's a variety of those situations, so to try to deal with all of them right here will really just take away from what we're trying to do here and just give people a familiarity with the program itself. So yes, please hold those questions. We can try to answer them at the end, or we can deal with them offline. And those are the questions that are very specific to individual organizations' situations. So if you click on the XYZ lobbying group, you'll get to the registrant profile page. This is the main page that you as a lobbying entity will encounter. Again, you'll notice that there's tabs here that says clients. If for some reason this was a client that was doing their mirror image registration, they would say lobbyists here instead of clients, and the client entity would then be registering lobbyists. And that's just an example of one of the titles we switched around when you start off on My Registrants as a client entity as opposed to a lobbying entity. Other than that, again, like I said, it's a very, very similar process whether you pick the lobbyist or the client itself. But here in the registrant profile page, one of the guiding forces behind this new application was to eliminate a lot of the redundancy, the redundant typing that filers were encountering. We have come up with the idea of maintaining a profile. And so what you're doing here is your login gives you access to a profile which you will keep current with basic contact information, the name of the company, the organization, email address, street address, phone numbers, key contacts under that organization, and also the clients that that organization represents. And we do understand if you're an association or some trade group, you might be your own client. You might be representing yourself, in which case you are the registrant and the client at the same time. So this registrant profile, and you'll see this carries over to activity reports and such. We're going to ask you to maintain a profile, which is basically a series of tables. So when it comes time to filing a report, the filing of the report should be very simple, very quick. Some registration reports could be filed with less than a minute. Activity reports, if the tables are maintained correctly, could be filed in just a couple minutes or 5 minutes. So the idea is that you can maintain your profile during the course of the year and not worry about adjusted filing time when it comes to filing the reports. It should be a breeze, or at least that's what we're hoping for. And obviously our user base will tell us if we've achieved that at some point. So let me just take a look at the profile page here itself. This top part of the profile page is really where you maintain your basic organization information. As you can see here, there is the name of the group, the fact that it's a lobbying entity versus an individual, street address, email, and phone number. You maintain that information you originally created when you create the new registrant profile on the My Registrants page. But you could also edit it and maintain it through the Edit Registrant Profile page here as well. The registrant name is here. The description is optional. This description is really just for large lobbying entities who might want to break up their reporting over 3 different groups or sections or individuals. And in the description here, it could say Group A, Group B, Group C, and help them understand which registrant belongs to which group of people. For most people, description is just completely unnecessary, so don't feel the need to fill that in. Nature of business is really, we would hope to put NAICS codes in here at some point. Right now, it's just a matter of picking from either the established list or adding something new. This is an example. Anytime you see a drop-down menu signified by one of those arrows, if you click on either the select text or if you click on the existing item that's been selected, you'll see a box with a blinking cursor. This cursor is really a search functionality. As soon as you start typing, you'll see that it filters the list below it so that you can find the thing that you're looking for. And so you could switch it that way. You can also add a new nature of business if the list doesn't incorporate something that you're looking for. And so you'd add it here, save it, and that would show up in the box. Over inside here, individual lobbyist versus lobbying entity, hopefully that's self-explanatory. There's not a lot that weighs on that, so it really is just a matter of how you want to describe yourself. You can make a registrant inactive so that they are not showing. If you notice that the status over here is active, and we do have a filter by status here so you can see your inactive. So if your group changes over time, or if you as a user log in, have additions, you can inactivate them so they don't show up on your main screen after a period of time. once you start filing reports and the system is starting to be used for a couple of years, there might be a lot of extraneous data that is old. We do try to keep all the past data for reference, and so you might want to inactivate a client so that they're not showing up on screens that you don't need to see them. IRS tax status, we've gone back and forth. I don't know if people noticed this a week ago. The language is slightly different. We really at some point had for-profit or 501c3, which did not take into account there's plenty of nonprofits that are not 501c3. So really, since the only reason to have the tax status here is the 501c3s take advantage of a discount in the registration rate, we settled on the language here, which is that you're either a 501c3 or you're not. And that's really what this field is for here. I think most filers are not 501c3s, so it should default to that and change that if necessary. I just want to bring your attention up here. If you are a trade association or association that's just lobbyists, you have internal lobbyists and you lobby for yourself, click yes here on this button. I'll show you why that's important. This is really just a time saver so that when you're entering a client, you can save some keystrokes. If you're entering yourself as a client, the information on this page will basically be repeated. So by clicking yes here, it'll give you an opportunity to create a client using the basic information you've already typed in. So, and we don't want you to have to go through that again in this case. The contact information itself, every registrant really needs at least one phone or one email address. Yeah, I recognize that this is a little bit different way of setup, but this is the entry tool for the left side of the screen. You enter information on the right side. So in order to add a phone number, you can add it over here. You pick the type of phone number it is. If you don't have a primary field, you have to at least make one of them primary so we know which one is the most important to you. And then you would just put in the value for the phone number. The same thing goes with email address, and you'll be able to type in the email address down here as well. Once you save, hit the blue save button, it will move it to the left side of the screen. Once you've added something, it can be deleted or edited all right up to the point where you use that contact info in a report. Once you've submitted a report, it becomes part of the record, and we're going to want to keep that phone number, that email address. Even if the phone number, email address changes, you can certainly add a new one and make that new one primary, but the older one will stay on the system for us. But up until that point, you can delete or edit an email address or phone number as you see fit. Same thing works for the address field as well. If you notice that down here there is a chance to type in a temporary address. I know there's not too many people that actually take advantage of that, but you can add more than one address. And if you do move, again, if you use an old address in the system, in a certified and submitted report, it will lock it down, but that doesn't stop you from creating a new address. So just keep adding addresses as you see fit. But when you're finished with everything, clicking the blue Save Contact Info or Save Address will move it to the left side of the screen. When you're done with the whole page, click the green Save Registrant Profile, and that'll update your registered profile in this section here. If you notice this Add New Client, by clicking the yes as you represent yourself as a client, you'll get this new button here which says Add New Client using my profile info. For the groups that do their own lobbying, this is important in that if you're the DC Hotel Association, you would be, a registrant profile would be DC Hotel Association, and then you would add yourself as a client, and that's how the software works, and this is trying to save you some keystrokes. As soon as you change that to no, you'll see that that button disappears. And that really is the only reason for that button right now, is so that you can save some keystroke adding yourself as a client. Once again, all you have to do is set up yourself, your registrant profile, and your clients, and that will be, for future reports, all that information will be there. The only reason to change that information is if the information has changed. If a phone number, an email, or street address has changed, or if you've added a new client, this is where you would update it. But if your clients, if you're an association and you just keep lobbying and reporting on the same, for the same company, you won't have to change this from report to report. It will stay. Once you have your profile, your basic organization's profile information, we are asking for key contacts, and this is important that we are looking for people at the organization that have something to do with the report. And what you can be is you can either be a point of contact, a POC. The POC, the primary POC, is the person who is going to get email from the system or from BEGA, so that when a report is filed or a payment is made, or when an upcoming report is due, these are the people in the organization that do an email from BEGA. Lobbyists are the people that are actually going to be listed on a report as lobbying for a certain client. The certifier is the person whose actually his name is going to appear on the report to certify and submit. The PIN code, in the past it was mandatory, now it's optional. I don't expect too many people to use this. It's really for large organizations where the certifier has somebody else preparing the reports and wants to make sure that they're the only ones that can actually submit a report. So they have a PIN code to prevent anybody else from certifying and submitting the report except for themselves. If you notice here, you're going to see these screens are really the same. This is the key contact. A lot of times the information about the key contact, the phone number, the email address, the street address, is going to be exactly the same as the profile, the registrant profile. If that's the case, please just, instead of typing in the information again, click here. This is going to bring up the information that you have from the profile. You'll be able to select it, and it will show up on the side. For phone number and email address, you'll want to do it twice, so you can pick both of them. And the same thing for the address. You can go and pick these, and you'll find that they'll show up on the left side of the page. I'm going to delete those since obviously the information is already there. Again, once you've added a key contact, go ahead and save it, and you'll see this list gets updated. In this case, we have the Bob Tester is everything for the operation. That's the person who's a lobbyist and also the point of contact and certifier. And we've also added Mary Tester, who's just a lobbyist. Mary Tester doesn't necessarily need to have anything to do with the software. She's just somebody that will be listed on the reports as an additional lobbyist. Heading back to registrant profile, I've shown you how to edit the registrant profile. These are the key contacts. The one other rule here, users and roles. This just brings us back to the original user login. So once you've created a registrant, in this case XYZ lobbying group, you can add additional users. Just by typing in their name and their email address here, you can have somebody log into the system and see the registrant the same way that you see it. So if you need assistance in adding communications because the filing deadline's coming up, you can add a new person in the office to the system. They'll log in. They'll pull up the same exact registrant role that you have created. They'll see the screen similar to this, and they'll be able to pull up this registrant profile, and they'll be able to assist, or you might even be handing it off. Maybe you're leaving the operation. You can hand off this registrant that you've created to a new person in the operation, and then at some point that person can remove you as a user on this profile as well. But that's where the user logins are sort of independent from the registrant profiles themselves. As a user login, you can have multiple registrants, and registrants can have multiple users as well. So it works both ways. While I'm back on this page, I do also want to point out a couple of things. If you do notice that your name is somehow misspelled, sometimes we didn't have first and last names when we created some of the migration data. You can go up here and edit your user login right here. You can also change your password, and you can log out of the system as well. Also want to point out the support function here. You'll see this a little bit more prominently on the login page, but it's on the top of every page here as well. If you do have an issue that comes up along the way, you can fill in the form here. The issue type, select from this list. Don't worry if it's not on the list. We can add new types as we go along, and just type in small details about what it is you're trying to do. Click submit, and that will put a ticket into our support queue so that we can actually address your issue as it comes up. Let me get back to the lobbying group here. So the one other thing on this top of this registrant profile is the ability to delete the registrant. This is a limited time use for this. Once you've certified and submitted a report, it's not going to let you delete the registrant. The best you can do is go to the registrant profile and make it inactive. But if you've just started typing in and you just want to start over, you can delete the registrant, and that'll delete the whole profile. It'll also delete all the clients and everything underneath it, so just be careful not to use that if that's not what you're trying to do. That's the top part of the registrant profile. This is the basic information about your organization. On the bottom part of this registrant profile page, you'll see two tabs here, clients and payments. Briefly, to talk about payments is that if you're a larger organization and you have a lot of registration reports because you have a dozen clients or so, you do have the ability to certify and submit the individual reports. You don't have to pay for them at the time of submission. You could say pay later. And if you pay later, you're going to find that a record is showing on the payments tab. That'll allow you to, at the end of filing, let's say a dozen registration reports, 10 registration reports, whatever it is, you can come here and use one credit card transaction to pay for all the reports. If you do have multiple clients being paid off of the same credit card transaction, we do send you multiple receipts. We'll send you an email that says it's the master receipt that will list all of the clients who were paid for that one credit card transaction. It'll also be followed by individual email receipts for each individual client. We've been told that that is very helpful for charging back to individual clients. So if you're looking to pay for more than one under a credit card transaction, you can do the one credit card transaction and still receive individual emails that should be suitable for what you're looking to do. That's the Payments tab. We'll come back to that after we file a registration report. But here's the Clients tab. Under here, you'll list your clients. Again, if you're an association or a trade association, you're just lobbying for yourself, you'll just see the one client, and that client will be exactly the same as the registrant profile. In this case, you'll notice that we have some basic information about the client. And out on the right, you'll see the Manage Profile and the File Reports. This is the part where the Manage Profile is the part where you will do most of your information as far as maintaining the profile for that individual client. The reports are based on individual clients. So if you do have 10 clients, you'll file 10 registration reports and 10 activity reports. And this is where you will do the main part of that work. Just keep in mind the fact that all the information you typed into the registrant profile will be pulled from the registrant profile for the reports, and you won't need to retype any of that. I'm going to just add a new client at this point. Again, these are sorting fields so that as soon as you start typing in, you can sort the field down to what you're looking for. I am going to just quickly do some phone numbers. If I can ask people to just please turn down your, or mute your phone so that we don't have the background noise, it would be very helpful. So this is me creating a new profile. This is the client profile as opposed to the registrant profile. You can see that now it lists the LMP Corp there as well. I put the basic information into the profile. I do need to add a contact at the client. This person's name will actually show up on the report, so it is important that we put in a name here. This is a little bit redundant, but just click both boxes for that. Again, you could choose from the profile for the individual here as well. Again, if people can mute their phones, please, it would be very helpful for the rest of the people on the webinar. So now I've saved a key contact for this client. And this brings us to the rest of, you can edit the client profile anytime you need to. You can add key contacts if it changes along the way. I'm sorry about the background noise. The bottom part of the Manage Profile page here is the 4 tabs. These are the main 4 tabs that you will deal with when managing your profile. The Compensation tab is going to be the most important one here. Whether you're filing a registration report or an activity report, you need a compensation record. That's the only record you need to file, either one of those reports. All the other tabs, communications, relationships, and contributions and gifts, are optional. And so compensation records are the most important part of this. The only thing you need for a registration report is a registration compensation record, and I'll do that one right now. Click on the dark blue Add New Compensation button to add a resource. The resource can be the lobbyist that you entered as key contact. So when you enter a key contact here as a lobbyist, Bob Tester, Mary Tester, when you get back to the profile and you try to add a compensation record, you'll see the lobbyist that you chose in key contacts as listed here as the lobbyists that you could select for your records. You can add more than one compensation record if you want more than one lobbyist listed, whether it's for an activity report or a registration report. That's really up to the individual filers. I'm going to click Bob Tester here. This report we're doing, you pick between registration report and an activity report record. I'm going to do registration report to start. This is for 2019. Generally, it'll be, for a lot of people, will be just the entire year, January 1st to 12/31. That doesn't have to be the case. If you're looking for something that's a little bit, if you know that it's only going from January 1st to March 1st, or you know it's going to happen some other point, you're free to change the length of the agreement accordingly. Compensation amount, we've been told, or it's become clear that a lot of organizations don't know their compensation amount when they're doing the registration reports. It's certainly permissible to put one in. If you know that you have a monthly retainer of $10,000, you could put that in. You could also click the box next to compensation amount is unknown at this time of registration. So if you don't know it, instead of entering 0, it's possible to enter 0 plus the box. But that is an acceptable option there. Lobbying matters, there's already a list being built of what different people have put in, but you can either pick from the list if what you see is there, or especially if you've added it in the past. Matters related to education and technology. If you do not see what you need on the list, you can click Add New, and you can add a new matter over here. Click the green check mark, and you should see whatever you added as new show up in your lobbying matters field, and then just save the record. Once you save the record, you'll see that it shows up under the table here. And again, over time, you will start seeing lots of different registration records. One of the things that we're thinking is that if you have a registration record that spans over the series of years, you could put in something that started January 1st, 2014 with no end date, and that would basically say that's the one compensation record that still matters. If it changes, you could always click end date. Then we're asking people to actually type in a start and end date. That's not working exactly the way we want it to, but if you put in a start and an end date of January 1st or 12/31 sometime during 2019, it should work for you. The other thing is to do a 2019 registration report, you need at least 1 day of 2019 to show up in this range so that the report will actually find it. So you could have a registration report that started in 2018 and ended in January, but as long as there's a little bit of an overlap between the date of the compensation record and the range of the report that you're trying to file, you'll see it show up. So now that we added a compensation record for the registration report, I want to go ahead and file a registration report to show you how all this works. You can do it from either this blue file reports right in the Manage Profile. If you find yourself back on this registrant profile, you can just go over here and click on File Reports as well. But once you get on the reports page, you'll notice that you still have your client's basic information up there. Your tabs are now your choice between the registration report and activity report. This previous system reports, we don't have them in there yet, but we do hope to pull up some of these reports from the old system at some point, so you'll be able to refer to them in the future. Registration reports, you can see there's no data available because we have not filed the report yet, but if you click Add New Registration Report over here, there will be a checklist. If you missed out any information, for instance, the phone number under the entity or a key contact for the client, it will give you a checklist. There will be a red X mark. There's about 15 items on the list. There will be a red X mark next to the piece of information that you failed to put in. It's just a matter of going back and adding that piece of information, coming back and trying to start a new report, and you'll get past that checklist. And I'll leave that open for the activity report so I could show you what one might look like. So you can see that it's basically a blank report. We're going to, for the January renewal, we click on Renew. Report period is the 2019 to 12/31. As soon as I click on the report period, notice how it pulls in the details from the compensation record here. Everything else is basically pulled from the profile. You're welcome to add an additional comment if you have one. Once you save this as a draft, you'll see that the reports table has now been updated. You can certify and submit later. You don't have to do it at this time. Now, as you go back to your reports table, you'll see that you have a 2019 registration report. It has not been submitted. You have some basic actions over here where you can open a PDF and actually look at this report. At this point, you can download or print it if you do need to have somebody else approve it within your operation. But there's the report itself, registrant client, nature, and there's the registration. It does tell you it hasn't been certified and submitted yet. You can go back, you can delete this report. As long as it hasn't been submitted, you can delete it and just start over again. This sometimes helps if you have completely, if there's something that's not working for you, feel free to delete the report if it hasn't been submitted. You can go back to edit and scroll down and save it again and go back to the to certify and submit. But this details page, if you've saved it and did not certify and submit at the time of creation, go to details, and you'll also find that at the bottom of the page. Edit and details will really get you to the same point, so there's no real big difference here. I'm going to certify and submit it now. You'll see that I can pick from the certifier list. Bob Tester was the only one we set up as a certifier for this registrant. I'm going to click Bob Tester's name. It's filled in on the lower level. Check the box next to his name, certify and submit. If you had typed in a PIN number, that's where you would have typed in the PIN number in order to make sure that it went through. As you can see, that it has now been certified and submitted. We can pay now, we can pay later. I'm going to click pay later. We're back on the reports. You see it's now submitted and not paid. If I go back to the registrant profile and click on the payments page, you'll see that LMP Corp is now, there's now a fee due for that. And you can make a payment, pay the selected one, proceed to checkout, and this is where you would type in your credit card information. If you do, there's a couple of situations. If for some reason, I think we've got all the logic figured out in the system so that there's no late fees being charged at this point. For a while there, we had a couple of late fees showing up when they shouldn't. Or if there's some situations where a couple of people registered for 2019 in the old system, we're asking if that happened, that people register again for 2019 in the new system, but there's no need to pay the fee again. It's just show us documentation that you paid in the old system, and we'll be able to mark it as paid in the new system as well. So there is that ability. If there's any questions about payments, just please, again, either create a support ticket or let the people at BEGA know, and we can adjust the payments accordingly.
Hey, Mark, can I ask you a question?
Sure.
So you have a registrant that is a company. It's a for-profit company, and it employs. It has an employee that has many tasks, including lobbying on behalf of the company. So I assume the company is a lobbying entity, but it's its own client. Do you identify the company as is the company a registrant as a lobbying entity, and then it's also the client?
Okay, and I think this takes us back to more of a BEGA policy where there should be some guidance out there as to exactly who needs to file where. But if you're asking me about a case where somebody has internal lobbyists and they also have a company that they've hired?
No,
is that what you're asking?
No. I'm asking if the only lobbyist they have is internal.
Mm-hmm. Okay, then that's fine. That's a lobbying entity. And all you're doing is when you create your registrant profile, you're creating a client in the exact same image of the registrant profile. So in this case, it would be XYZ Lobbying Group. Under the registrant profile, put the lobbyists who work for the organization, whether it's one person or 10 people, and then just treat the client as the client. At this point, you would be XYZ Lobbying Group, manage their profile, pick the lobbyists that are working, do their compensation details, file a report accordingly. If you have internal lobbyists, that should be pretty simple. You'll only have the one client listed in your registrant profile, and your reporting should be very easy since you only have the one report to do, the one registration, the one activity report to do.
I thank you. That's a perfect answer. Appreciate it. Thanks.
Okay.
Mark, this is Michael Cooper from the Airport Authority. To you, we are just what you described earlier. The Airports Authority hires me as an internal lobbyist, and we have XYZ Corporation doing external lobbying for us. So if I understand you correctly, what I do is file as MWA, as the lobbying entity, file me as the primary point of contact and the lobbyist, and then I also create a registration for the external lobbyists we hire, or do they have to create that themselves and tie it back to MWA?
Well, the external lobbyists you hired will be doing their own report, but you're supposed to be doing the client-side report for that external lobbyist. And now the best way that I can see the software doing that is that you would be, MWA would be a lobbying entity, plus you'd have MWA would also be a client, and that client would be your mirror image for your lobbying group. Whether or not you need to pay twice for that is something BEGA will have to address. Do you have to pay a registration fee as the client version of the lobbying group, and also as your internal lobbyist? I can't answer that, but right now, from the software's point of view, I think you'd have two registrants, one where MWA is the lobbying entity and one where MWA is the client. And that's the only way I can see how to address it. And then I'll let you work it out with BEGA about paying the registration fee.
Okay.
We can certainly mark, if they say you only have to pay it once, we can mark one as being, sort of a duplicate payment, and that's possible, but I can't guide you on that.
Okay, so the last question is, how does ABC Company, who we hire, show up in this report? I know they'll file their own report, and they'll say MWA is their client.
Right.
So I don't have to, but do I have to put in what their anticipated compensation is, or do I just let them self-report?
And again, that is, they'll report their compensation in one way, and you'll try to match that in your report. It should be the mirror image of their report. So if they say, they get a $10,000 monthly retainer, you would mention that in your report, the compensation record in your report, similar to the way they would have done it in their own. You won't see their registrant. As you log into the system, you won't see them because they'll log into the system and create themselves as a registrant. You won't see that, but you will go create yourself as a registrant so that you could report the mirror image of your lobbying group,
I understand.
whoever you hired for lobbying group. It's a little ungainly. It's the way that the BEGA rules, regulations, the DC code is asking for it. The idea of the mirror and report really creates twice as much information in the system. Obviously, if the lobbying group is reporting a communication and the client is also reporting that same communication, it sort of doubles up on everything you're going to find in the search functionality. But that is something that is sort of part of the process right now, and the software allows for it, but if that changes in the future, we'll make sure that we adjust it accordingly.
Thank you, Mark.
Mark, I tried to ask you a question earlier in the call, and you asked me to wait 10 minutes, and I feel like we still haven't gotten to it.
Okay, go ahead and ask it again then, please.
Yeah. Okay. I'm trying to figure out about entering lobbying communications. So our executive director has been able to he's been able to add other staff as key contacts and users with admin rights, but when this other user who has admin rights tries to enter lobbying communications, they're told they can't have access. So how do we get
and that might be an individual thing. Again, we migrated some data over to the new system, and we created some permission issues. So if that's the case, that you're getting some error screen that says you do not have permissions for this system, then we can deal with that offline. I'm about to show you how to enter communication. So if that's the question, then we'll deal with that now. But if you're getting into a permissions issue, if somebody else, then we can just, I just need to know exactly what your other user is seeing, and in which case we can address it accordingly. But let me show the communications right now, and we'll see if we can, if one person can do it and the other person can't, then there might be an issue with your individual profile.
May I ask a question about compensation before you move to communications?
Okay.
Okay. I had completed the activity report because I was pressed against trying to do the 15th, and then I see they extended it. But when I went in, I think I was confused with the compensation one, and I did not make a payment because it never popped up for me. Can I go back in and make that payment?
Well, there's no activity report payment due, so you can file activity reports.
No, but for
I'm sorry,
but if, the registration
for the
report portion.
Okay. Yes. If for some reason it didn't show up, we can please we can talk after the present. Let me finish the presentation. We can talk about it, and we can also deal with it offline. Yeah. It's possible, but if you just saved the registration report and you didn't certify and submit it, that's possible why you did not see a payment come up. But we can address that at individual questions, specific questions like that after I finish with the presentation here. So we were able to we were able to file a registration report. If we can move on to activity report, similar to compensation, we are going to add an activity report compensation record. So we originally did not have this, but again, sometimes we added a little complexity to the application in order to give it flexibility. And we did hear from a lot of users that they got they were very general going forward for the registration report because they didn't quite know exactly how much compensation they would be receiving, but they got very specific going backwards on the activity reports. We were hoping that one compensation record would cover both reports, but we quickly found that wasn't the case. So we do have the ability to create an activity report so that you can do something a little bit more specific. Again, you can pick your lobbyists for the activity report going backwards. In this case, a lot of people just have the range matching the date range of the report for 2018. This is the last year for 6 months worth of activities. In 2019, looks like it's moved to quarterly reporting. I'm sorry, let me go back and do that. Activity report 7-1. Now, I'm just entering this range as an example. It is possible that it's possible that you just started working for the client on December 15th, in which case the start of agreement is 12/15/2018 to 12/31. It could also be that you just worked for them for the month of October, put that in as the agreement. Once again, the only thing, if you're filing an activity report for the last 6 months of 2018, we just need to see at least 1 day occur within the agreement. So if it was a June 15th through a July 15th report, that will work for this system. Just at least there's 1 day that matches the range of the compensation record, has to match the range of the report. Again, the compensation amount. This compensation amount unknown at the time of registration, we're going to get rid of that. That was added recently. It should not show up when you're doing an activity report because this little question mark will tell you that the activity report, as much as the registration report could be a little bit vague, the activity report needs to be a little bit more detailed. Again, we can just do a monthly retainer. And again, lobbying matters. Once you've typed in your lobbying matters for the registration report, you should see it here. So you shouldn't have to keep typing it in. You should be able to find it. Notice that once you start selecting by typing in some keyword from your lobbying matter, you might have to scroll down a little bit here to find your actual one that you picked previously. But once you've added a lobbying matter, don't keep adding it. It'll be there. I'm going to save that. Notice how I now have an activity report for Bob Tester. Let's also add in one for Mary Tester for the activity report for the same. And we're going to make her just a little bit different. She just worked for the 2 months here. Again, she so had a different compensation rate for a monthly salary. And again, scrolling down to find it on the bottom of the list. So now we actually have 2 compensation records for the activity report. That is all you need for an activity report. So you can start filing your activity report at this time, and you'll be able to do it. But we also recognize that people will need to add communications and such and other items. Communications tab is where really the heart of most people's reporting comes. Right now, you'll maintain a table, and this table will really start to grow over time. It'll be every communications that you've ever had with TC officials. The thing about the new application is that you don't have to wait for the filing date to come up before you start entering communications. You can enter them the day they happen. So if it makes it easier for people to keep this up to date on a daily, weekly, monthly basis, when it comes time to filing the activity report, again, the filing will be a breeze because your profile tables are up to date. Adding a new communication is by clicking on the dark blue button. We should have a list of all officials here. We are trying. It is not always the case. If you do find that somebody is not listed, please fill in a support ticket under here so we can come back to it. Sorry, let me get back to this. And we will add the person. So what we're really trying to get here is people to select from a list and not type in the officials themselves. That becomes a little bit problematic with misspellings and different spellings for different people's names. But in this case, if you're looking for the council chair, you'll be able to sort. You can sort by the last name. You can sort by. We're not right now. The council members. Individual offices are not in there, but we do have that behind the scenes. So the idea that it's a staffer in Mendelson's office or Che's office, we will know, the system knows that, but right now we're just asking for the ability to search by the council. A variety of other people's, my name is in here. It's a large list, and we'll keep adding to it. If you need to just search for, you're not sure about somebody's name, you should be able to sort of type in initials and so on. So you should be able to select from a large group of lists. I've been using Brian Flowers as the general counsel in my demonstration, so I'll pick Brian here again. Additional information, we've added this from user feedback with the idea that a lot of times the communication has, people want to expound on it a little bit. For instance, you met with a council member in a room with five of the council member staffers. You only got 3 of their names. It really depends on how BEGA is asking for filers to report these things. Some people are more comfortable filing every single person in the room. If somebody is looking for, if it's a large room and you didn't receive names, you might say, the official was the council member, and in here you can add +4 staffers, or the chief of staff, or John Smith, chief of staff, or so on. It also might be that you send an email communication to one person and you CC 50 people. You might either list the 50 people or put 50 people. It's going to be hard to do that with 150 characters, but you might also say +50 additional people. Again, additional information is a little bit of a free-form field to sort of add information about the contact. It's also possible that the official listed there is showing up as a different role or agency, in which case you might add in the additional information is that contacted Brian Flowers, but at the time he was, in council or the mayor's office or something like that. So, but that's what additional information is for. Type of communication, this is getting a little bit messy. Well, we're hoping it was a little bit cleaner. But we have had the ability to add people to do new. But you could select email. We have a couple of options that have a little bit more descriptors here, but email is the same thing for anything. Meeting, conversation, we're trying to come up with a much better, more defined list, and hopefully by the next time you do a filing, this list will be a lot more clear. But right now I'm just going to say that's an email. I'm going to say it was December 4th. Time is optional, but if you had 2 phone calls and you want to keep track of both phone calls, you can you can put in a time of the phone call, but that's not necessary to fill that in. Purpose of communication is free form, so you can actually type in anything you want. And then you would save it up, and then you would see it here under communications. So that's how you add an individual communications. We also have the ability to import a spreadsheet. We're gonna force you to follow our format under the spreadsheet, so you can actually download the template right here. Once you've downloaded the template, you'll see how we're asking for it. It is a little bit. We do ask for first and last name in different fields, so we're asking people to split that up. But the titles on the download template you'll see sort of match the fields that you're going to see on the table here. Once you've created your spreadsheet, you would import the new contacts. You would choose the spreadsheet name from here. This gives you some details about exactly what we're looking for. As part of the process of importing it, we're going to try to match the names that you give us, the first name, last name. We're going to try to match it against the DC official list that we maintain, plus the meeting type, the email, the meeting, the phone call. We're trying to match it against our internal list, and so on. When you do import all of your communications, it's either going to match or it's not going to match. If it doesn't match, it's going to ask you to fix and you'll see the status over here that sort of says pending or ready to move. At some point, you've uploaded 185 of them are ready to move. You can move those over to the current tab at any time, and then the other 15 you might have to pick individually in order to clean them up so that they can be moved over. But once you've cleaned them up, they'll be marked ready to move, and you can move them over. Even after you've moved them over, as long as you haven't filed the report yet, you can actually still edit them once they're in the current. So if you do move over things and you notice that something still needs to be adjusted, go ahead. As long as you see the edit or delete buttons in the actions field, it means it's not a locked contact. It means you haven't submitted on a report. You can edit it or delete it accordingly. So that's how you import communications. We've had a little bit of issues on this. We're going to try to make it cleaner in the future, but anybody who has any questions about importing the communications, please reach out through the support tickets and we'll try to address them. Relationships, not too many people are showing relationships, but here's the relationship that, again, I'm just using Brian Flowers. Business and professional relationships, they tend to just be active. You can enter one until it ends. If you don't have any end date, it's just sort of the start date will govern it, and it will just be active until, and it'll just show up on your reports until you close this relationship out. Contributions and gifts. This has become a little bit difficult as well, but really what you're doing is you're either giving a contribution to a campaign committee, in which case we've tried to download some of the campaign committees from the OCF website. This might go back a few years so that some of them are out of date. 2016 is a bit out of date, but we're going to try to maintain that in a much more current fashion. You can add new if it doesn't exist here, but at some point, if we can keep this system up to date accordingly with the Office of Campaign Finance, we might be able to eliminate the ability to add new ones because everything should be there. Contributions tend to go to campaign committees. Gifts tend to go to DC officials, in which case you could pick the official just like you do for communication. On behalf of his key here, you're either going to do it on behalf of the lobbying group, the registrant itself, or you're going to do it on behalf of the corp. The way I've heard, you shouldn't be doing a campaign contribution to a political committee on behalf of the client, so that shouldn't be acceptable under contribution. But you might be given a gift. Maybe it's a meal at an event or some other sort of gratuity or honorarium to a DC official. And so here you would be picking on whether or not it's the client itself or the lobbying group. And the difference here is that if it's on behalf of the client, it's going to show up on Schedule A2, and if it's on behalf of the lobbying group, it should show up on Schedule C. The other thing about this, if you do enter a contribution that shows up on Schedule C, or if you enter a relationship on the previous tab, once you've entered it for one client, it's really germane to the registrant themselves, so it's going to show up on every client once you've added a relationship or if you've added a Schedule C type of contribution. So a contribution on behalf of the lobbying group to Bowser for Mayor, it would have to be during the save it up, and then it will show up on the table, and it would be suitable for reporting at this time. So once you've added communications and relationships and all your contributions, you're ready to file an activity report. Just click on File Reports. At this point, move over to the Activity Reports tab, add a new activity report. Again, the checklist will come up if you've missed a piece of information. Notice how everything at this point is just blank. Select your report period, which is July 1st, and it will pull up everything that you've just previously entered. So here are the two compensation details records we added. Here's the communication. Here's that relationship that we had added. The one thing about the activity report, the only thing we haven't moved into a profile table is these number fields, whereas you might have some expenditures that you need to list accordingly. This is a little confusing up here. We have a Schedule B down here. If you enter compensation or retainer up here, it won't show up under Schedule B. It's only the numbers you show up that you enter in the second series here that will show up in the summary down here. If you notice that added the 100, and if I do another 100, it'll go to 200. So just keep that in mind. You can enter This compensation seems a little redundant. The idea that you move something here should really just total to here. We need a little bit more guidance from BEGA. We need to work on this section of the report as well. So down here, you can see that we did not add any Schedule 2 contributions. I added a Schedule C one that went with another one we had entered before. That shows up under Schedule B. And then again, add some additional comments if you feel that's necessary. You save the activity report as a draft, and you can look at it again. If you want to submit later, again, it will show up under Activity Reports tab and as not submitted. And when you can either print, you could create a PDF, which you can then download and save, or you can print it. I don't know why that didn't want to come up. This is not a time for it to, I'm going to go to details and certify and submit it. Again, pick the certifier that's name is going to go in the report, 2 checkboxes, certify and submit. Notice also that if there is anything missing as far as the communication or relationship, if you did not have any during the period in question for the activity report, something along the lines of these big red letters will show up under this section. So it's not that you have to tell the system that you didn't have any. It just won't find one, and then it'll put under the report the fact that there was no activity under that report at that time. And there's the activity report that comes up. I'm sorry, registration. That's the registration report. And there's the activity report. And you can see at the bottom it's certified and submitted at a certain date and time. Again, so that really is basically it. Again, you have a registrant profile. You manage the profiles. As you go along, keep the compensation records up to date, communications, relations, contribution, and when it comes time to filing the reports, it pulls the information from these tables, files the reports. Should be a lot simpler process as long as you've kept the tables up to date as you've gone along. So, okay, I mean, that's for the most part the basic part of the presentation. Again, I can address some questions now if anybody has them.
We have, when the migration happened, some of our clients that were already registered in 2018 did not come over. So when we put them back in the system now, will it recognize that, or because now it's coinciding with new registrations in 2019, so we don't have to worry about the fact.
If I had to do it again, I probably just wouldn't have done the migration. We thought we'd pull some over and help people get started. I think it created a little bit more trouble than it helped. I think it helped a lot of people, but I think that it got outweighed by the ones that it was too confusing. Yes, just go ahead and enter all this information anew with the understanding that we are going to save that information going forward. When we match up records as far as old reports, we will, for the most part, if we find a complete match of the name from the old system to the new system, we'll be able to add that report accordingly. Other than that, we'll do a little detective work to find out exactly which, if there's a new registrant name that doesn't quite match the old system, we'll find out by calling some contact numbers on the old system as to what the new system is. And that's really the only reason, the only stuff that comes over from the old system is the reports that you filed. But there's nothing in the old system that you need now in the new system to get started and get going. In the future, there will be, it will sort of not allow you to file an activity report until you file the registration report. We couldn't do that for this year because the registration reports for 2018 were filed in the old system. So we relaxed that restriction for this current reporting period. But in April, when you try to file an activity report, it will look for a 2019 registration report in the new system. And if it doesn't find it, it will ask you to file a registration report before filing an activity report. So that's the way it will work.
In my case, it did have you. It didn't have this in the system at first, and so I had to do a registration in order to do an activity report. And we had already paid for 2018, so I had to pay again. So are you all open to, how are you going to?
Yeah, you shouldn't have had to pay for 2018 again. You shouldn't have had to file a 2018 report in this system unless, of course, somebody was filing a new report for our December, a client that came on board in December, it might be that we filed a report in this new system for a new client. But, yeah, we found that a few people filed 2018 reports, and we'll go through. We have a list of them. It's about 20 different 2018 reports were filed, and we'll make sure that if you did find, if there was a double payment, that'll be addressed. And if you filed the 2018 and you didn't pay the double payment because you noticed that it was charging you twice, we can waive fees as well as soon as we find out exactly, how the 2018, why the 2018 report was done. So yes, we'll deal with those on an individual basis as that goes.
And Mark,
yeah, I was specifically told by BEGA that I needed to create a new 2018 registration so that I could file the semi-annual report, and then I would have to pay again. I'm sorry you got that information, but I'm sorry you got that information, but we'll just deal with that to make sure that you certainly don't need to pay double. We'll work that out, but I'm sorry about that.
Hey, Mark, Dave Wilmot.
Yes. Hey, Dave.
Hi, how are you? There are two questions. One is a late payment fee that's been attached to. There weren't any late payments of $350.
I went through. Yes, people who filed 2018 registration reports, they'll find $300 worth of late payment fees because obviously those fees were due in January. And again, I have a list of all the 2018 registrations, and I'm going to reach out to everybody to make sure about why they actually filed the 2018 registration report. And then at that time, we can just waive those fees. There were a bunch of 2019 late fees, which obviously we haven't passed since the date is now February 1st. No late fees should be assessed for 2019. I went through the system last night to make sure that all those fees have been waived. So nobody should see a late fee in 2019 for a 2019 report. But people who did file a 2018 report would certainly see the late fees because it was expecting it back in January of 2018. It's actually showing that the system works, but we do need to deal with these issues so that you're not seeing those fees. Please don't pay $300 worth of late fees for a 2018 report. Please don't pay for a 2018 report in any sense because the system is not, unless somebody is just failed to file in 2018, they can actually use this new system to come up to date. But anybody who filed a report in 2018, registration report in 2018 in the old system and paid in the old system and then did it again in the new system, we need to address those and we'll take care of those one by one. If you filed the report but didn't pay, that's easy to take care of. If you filed the report and paid, we can actually credit you your filing in the new report. If you paid in the old report and then again in the new report, then there's going to have to be a refund process for that issue.
Just a follow-up.
And again, we have a list of everybody who did the 2018 reports, and I'll reach out to make sure that everything is settled in that.
Just another question. I tried to amend the report because what happened is that notwithstanding what I was trying to do as compensation, it kept doubling the compensation. And so after frustrated in trying to fix that, I was trying to file an amended report and was unable to do so. Hello?
Yeah, Dave, I'm sorry. We will, let me talk to you individually and we will address that. The amendment reports have been tested, but certainly nothing like the testing of individual users in situations like this. So let me call you and find out what your experience was on that and see if we can address it.
I appreciate it.
Are you the person we should follow up with if you asked or if you suggested talking individually?
I am. I'm encouraging people to click on the support function on the and filling out a support ticket. My name and number is here on the placard. On the document here. All I can say is that for the last 2 weeks, I've been spending 30, 40 minutes on the phone with some people. Hopefully these webinars will maybe take a little of the pressure off. I know people have been calling my phone number and getting voicemail, and I after a few hours go by, I try to document all the voicemails, and then I start trying to call through. But it's right now I'm not above water individually. If you fill in a support ticket, we do have other people that are looking at the support tickets, so somebody else might get back to you.
Issue? Okay, so for the permission,
for that permission issue, yes, please do. Yeah, and especially if it's a payment issue, or if you've gotten through a lot of the software and you just have one small question, please make that clear in the support ticket that says, I've gotten through most of it and I just have this one small question. Those things, anything I can call back and deal with in 5 or 6 minutes, I'd be thrilled to handle those before I spend 30 and 40 minutes on the phone call. I'm happy to spend as much time on the calls with everybody. It's kind of hard to tell when I call someone back if it's going to be a 40-minute call or a 4-minute call. I apologize. I'm trying to do these myself, and again, we do have other people that are calling other people back that do the support tickets. But I do realize that there's a lot of people that are just not hearing back from us, and we're trying to get ahead of the curve on this. Again, hopefully the extension to the end of the month will take a little of the pressure off, and hopefully by midweek next week we'll have at least addressed or at least contacted everybody that has filed a support ticket. Again, the support tickets are the official way to get your question in front of us. Calling my number, I'll try my best to get back to you. But if we don't have a support ticket, then at some point, calling my phone number will work at some point. But do the support tickets so we know exactly how many people out there have a question.
Hey, Mark,
I have a quick one.
Mark, I just
Yep.
want to say, Dave Wilmot again, I just want to say thank you very much for your patience in dealing with all of this.
Okay, well,
no apologies needed on your side. I know how much you've been overwhelmed, so thank you.
I appreciate that, Dave. Thank you. And again, we'll try to get to everybody, and hopefully, I'm hoping that at least by the April filing, people will have a much better sense of this new software. We hate to change things on people, but I hope that the software will be appreciated in some future filing. Probably not right this minute, but maybe in a future filing. And please, if there's something about it that just doesn't work, let us know. We've been incorporating a lot of user feedback over the last month and the last 3 or 4 months. So, and a lot of the changes that we're making is because users are saying this doesn't work for the way that I've been reporting in the past. So please let us know what it is. Especially if it's something that's not completely urgent. If you would just like to see something that would make it easier in the future, fantastic, let's do it. If you see a late fee being charged for a 2019 report before February 1st, let me know about that. That's a problem. You shouldn't see that, but if you do, I want to know immediately about that as well. So it does help for the user feedback, does help.
So for a quick question, for the communications tab, the import spreadsheet, is that a required step? I couldn't tell if that's like a step A and then a step B, or if you can just do communication.
Yeah, no, you can just import them individually. That's not a problem.
Okay.
It's actually the cleanest way. If you have 5 or 10, I would suggest just doing those individually. There's some people with hundreds, and when you have hundreds, it's hard. And I understand that some people have maintained Microsoft Word documents and other documents that sort of like keep track, and they just uploaded the Word documents in the past, which was easy to do and sort of fulfilled some of the requirements. Unfortunately, it made searching on these things impossible because you weren't being able to search the PDFs or the documents that are attached to these reports. This new system really has a very vibrant search functionality for the general public. So you'll see that there's a lot of the benefits from this software is making the search capabilities much more friendly. So there's that. And so we understand that this might be a big change, but if people want to download that spreadsheet and start keeping track of their contacts under that spreadsheet, I think it'll be fine, very easy to enter them. Again, just coming into the application and entering contacts on a weekly basis might make it a lot easier as well. Typing 5 or 6 per week as opposed to typing 200 at the end of the filing period is certainly a much easier way of doing it.
Okay, thanks.
Mark, this is Claudia
Yes.
McCoy. I was the one who was asking the question earlier about the registration report and the compensation. So do you want to call me or should I call you after this?
Yeah, Claudia, I think you've filed a support ticket in the past as well. If you want to try me at my desk, in about a half an hour or so. You could try that. You can leave a message. If I don't answer, leave a message, and I'll try to get back to you by the end of the day.
All right, thank you.
You're welcome. Does anybody else have any questions? Okay, well, if there's no more questions.
I have one more question.
Sure.
I have a question.
Okay.
This is Tanya Donalty. I represent Conduent. Conduent is a corporation, and they only employ contract lobbyists, so there are no in-house lobbyists. And I'm trying to figure out how on my registration I link our contract lobbyists, because in the past we have shown, you show your registrant as the client, which would be the corporation, and then you list the names and contact information for those contract lobbyists and their compensation. If I add our contract lobbyists as individual lobbyists, they don't appear to be connecting to the lobbying entity registration.
So you've created a registrant profile for Conduent as a client.
Yes.
So that it could do the mirror image report for the lobbying group. Again, this is a little hard for me to weigh in on as far as, and in the past you've listed the individual lobbyist at your lobbying firm under your report. In which case, at this time, you should be able to find your lobbying firm. Once you've added your lobbying firm as a lobbyist under your client registrant, you should see the lobbyist firm's name as an option for your compensation record. You will not see the individual lobbyist at the firm because you have not entered them as key contacts at Conduent, because they are not key contacts at Conduent. So what you're saying is in the past you've listed your individual the individual lobbyist at your contracting firm. The system does not allow you to do that now. If that is actually something, it will let you list the lobbying firm. So if it's ABC Lobbying, you could add that as the compensation record resource, but it does not allow you to add the individual lobbyist. If that is something that needs to be done, I have to leave that to BEGA to decide if that is something that is something that they want to see reported. Obviously, the lobbying firm will have reported these individual lobbyists on your behalf because it's showing up in the system because they're reporting it. But for the compensation record that you're filing on the side of the client, you could pick the ABC Lobbying Group as the resource, and that will show up on your report. And if you need to list the individual lobbyists, then that's a different conversation.
Yeah,
that's
that
how
is
well
exactly what we used to do. So I'm not sure what to do. Who would I? Because when I've called BEGA, BEGA tells me to call you.
Well, I know, but this is a policy. It's just a policy question, and just frame it to BEGA. Just frame it to BEGA. I just call on the front desk. I can't tell you who can answer that at BEGA. All I can say is frame the question in the way that in the past, as a client, we have reported the individual lobbyists at our lobbying firm on our report. Do we need to continue to do that in this new system? I will ask the same question, but right now it's not possible unless you list them in the system. You would have to list them as key contacts under Conduent, and I can understand why you don't want to do that. But so
I
mean,
these individual lobbyists.
Okay.
I did that just to see if it would work. And it still doesn't work. I still can't get them on the report.
It should. Okay, then I'll need to log in and see. That should work.
There's like no way. I've tried every which way, and I can't get, no matter what I do, I can't get them to tie in. So
then again, why don't we talk? Why don't we talk later, because I can log into your account and see what you're seeing, and we'll go from there.
That would be super. Okay, so I will call you. I actually will call you next week because I imagine you'll be have a major influx of calls today. So how about that?
Okay, very good.
I'll call you Monday.
Thank you. Is there any other
are you open
questions?
Monday? You're not. Are you open Monday?
We're not open. We're not. No, Monday is a district holiday, so I'll be here Tuesday.
Okay, great. Thank you very much, and thank you for explaining.
Sure. Oh, you're welcome. Is there any other questions? Okay, then I'll end this meeting now. Thank you, everybody, for participating. And again, fill in a support ticket if there's some, or call my number if you don't. You can catch me between other phone calls if you don't mind waiting for me to return your call. But a support ticket is probably the best way to go here. Thank you very much for participating, and good luck with the filing.